Now we come down to the grand final for Battle of the Song. I've been through the decades yesterday. This is how we're going to review them. The decades: Battle of Song 1900s, Yankee Doodle by Billy Murray. A good song. It wasn't quite number one in its year, but it was a highly rated song. Totally really forgetting about these days. The Battle of the Song 1910. Some of these days, Sophie Tucker. Battle of the Song 1920, Swanee. Everybody knows Swanee by Al Jolson, but they're not really in a lot of people's memory these days. Battle of the Song 1930s, Over the Rainbow by Julie Garland, one of the big motion pictures I think of all time. But of course, I may not beat the records in these days. The Battle of the Song 1940s, Ghost Riders and the Sky, Vaughan Monroe. Well, he only took second place because the Bing had stolen it with Battle of the Bands, White Christmas, which was really the song of the decade. So, not Ghost Riders in the Sky. Battle of the Song 1950s. I think this is where it all started. And I think even Elvis and Beatles and all the other bands were very, very influenced by 1950s rock around the clock, Bill Haley and the Comets, and they all started rocking. Other rockers in the 50s liked it too. The band thing really started from there. Before that, it was more big bands, but there were some smaller bands, but they weren't rocking. And then Elvis started rocking. Chuck Berry started rocking. They all started rocking. They were still rocking in the 60s. Although they said rock and roll was dying off, so the Beatles came in with an Aussie beat sound, a British beat. Hey Jude was a very good song by the Beatles in the 1960s. I differ to say that it's the Beatles' best song. I don't think it is. Something like She Loves You, Yeah, 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 I Want to Hold Your Hand, made from films and that. I think they were better than Hey Jude. Just a slow ballad there, I think, with Paul McCartney singing. Staying Alive in the 1970s with the Bee Gees. It wasn't the original Bee Gees even knew, but they went disco and they had several hits. But I don't think disco was as big as rock and roll. People rocked for years and all those rock bands, and some bands are still rocking now. But there's not many discoing. 1980 is a big song, Another Brick in the Wall too. There's also part one and part three, and you can have an album version with them all joined together. But yeah, big and strange song to try and show you what happened when you were at school. But the rock craze was already going along before then. And 1990 is a beautiful song by Bryan Adams, I Do It For You, Everything I Do. And that's rock also. It's put down to rock. It dates back to rock and roll, rock around the clock. The year 2000s, or the decades, Yeah by Usher. It's fair. I wouldn't say it's a really great song. And Battle of the Song 2010s, We Found Love. It's a bit of good pop. And the Battle of the Song 2020s, Don't Start Now with a Dua Lipa. A lot to prove yet. The rest of the 2020s to come. So, on the William Live Show, I declare that the winner of Battle of the Song is the 1950 song, Rock Around the Clock. It made a real impression on a lot of people. Bill Haley, Rock Around the Clock, was a number one. A lot of other bands only picked up from there, including the Beatles, including Elvis. He seen what could be done with a little bit of rock, and all that went out to do it as well. It wasn't that Bill Haley was that big. Had a few released later on when the rock and roll cruise was still going, the rock and roll revival in the 70s. After a look at it, we would go for a song that changed really the world, Rock Around the Clock, 1950s, 1955, from Bill Haley and his Comets. But the Comets don't pass this way very often. And there you go. That has been the Battle of the Song. And that's been chosen as the number one. Number two, it's difficult. I like Over the Rainbow by Judy Garland. And I think must be up there. I'm one too fond of the Bee Gees turning to disco, but they did. Staying Alive. So we'll make that number three. But I'm going for the song that I think changed everything, Rock Around the Clock. It was mostly pop and ballady stuff before that. Till in the 1950s, rock and rollers got their hands on rock. They tried to keep it going through the 60s. It was fading. Because Bill Haley and other rockers were fading. But then along came more rock in the form of the Beatles, Stones, and things like that. And it just good old rock. And in the 70s, had a rock and roll revival. And then after that, even in the new wave and that punk rock, all other kinds of rocks were going on. Rock around the clock. Therefore, I declare that one is the winner of Battle of the Song.